Cosmic Woes of Starving Beasts. Chapter 2. Between a Rock and a Web. The hazel wolf spider dangled just a smidge to the left of its freshly woven web, the thin strands connected by thousands of intersecting lines that dizzied any passing onlooker. Spying the surrounding airspace, the spider hung by a thin strand of silk as it watched with all 8 eyes, patiently waiting as a housefly veered and took a turn too steep for its erratically flapping wings to correct, leaving it barreling into the clutches of the treacherous spiderweb. The hungry wolf spider fidgets its chelicerae in excitement, crawling towards the helpless fly as it wiggles and tugs to free itself to no avail. Such is the cruelty of nature, one life taken to fuel the other, no mercy given to prey at the hands of its predator. Brrr. A humming noise cut off the scene, breaking the cruelties of nature for a split second and leading the concentration outwards. Burglar. Come in, burglar. Radio transmission not transponding. Cut out of his dreamlike daze, the scrawny and petite Jeremy Burglar begins to look around at his surroundings. His black square-framed glasses, which normally hugged the sides of his pale face, and his medium-length caramel-colored hair, which normally dangled down to touch his rims, drooped down to meet his nose-tip. Having slid down from standing still and gawking at one spot for too long, he finally turned face to meet a middle-aged man, older than himself by over a decade, a late 30-something with deep black Italian hair, a neatly dry-cleaned gray business suit, and a grumpy disposition staring at him in vexation. The furrow of his brow jutting out like cragged rocks in a canyon, he pressed his long, bony fingers to his jagged brow line and sighed, exasperated. Jeremy, you were sent to get those file copies 10 minutes ago. What's the hold-up this time? His voice held a hum to it naturally, like a rusted RV camper that's been tuned up. At the top of his voice it began to morph into a kazoo and became comedically nasally. Quite an odd combo of sounds, Jeremy thought to himself on more than one occasion. Jeremy was much smaller than him, being only 5 foot on a good day, and even then he didn't pack any of the muscle most officers in this department seemed to carry with them. Jeremy was too embarrassed to admit that he had been caught within the throes of the hunting process of a wolf spider in the otherwise empty corner of the photocopy room, witnessing its finesse at what it did best. Dang photocopier was acting up again. You know how it is, eh, Hawes? Jeremy acted sheepishly and retreated away slowly, almost hitting the photocopy machine as he backed away. Jeremy couldn't help but stumble over his words, shaken at his superior Hawes' sudden appearance, and trying to find some lame excuse for why he did what he did. Hawes was a man that was as dry as concrete. If there was one word to describe him, it would be bland. Nothing interesting about him, really. He certainly wasn't top of the pecking order here at the Buffalo, New York Police Department. Analytics Division. Hell, he barely qualified for middle tier at best. But it was still enough to pass up Jeremy, who incidentally had just started his employment there a mere 2 weeks earlier. Hawes was a lot more understanding than most of the snob-headed pricks in this department, but that didn't mean he couldn't be a prick of his own when he wanted to be. Jesus, Jeremy, get your head out of your ass or you're going to be on the streets in no time. You've only been here a couple weeks and you're already bored to piss with busboy duty. I know it sucks dick, but you gotta suck it up. Think about it like this. You do a good job now, and that racks up. Everyone will see that, and maybe you'll even get a promotion. Gotta get some street action, you know what I'm saying? Despite the way Hawes acted, there was a note of sincerity in his words. Some underlying care from a superior to his associate. Jeremy knew that he was right. He had totally flunked the physical aptitude portion to pass the cadet training. His time on the running portion in particular had really made the rest of the training squad laugh. If it wasn't for his academic prowess in the written portions, he wouldn't have even made it off the chopping block and out of Arizona. Yeah, I hear ya, Hawes. Sorry, I just sorta zoned out there, Jeremy said with a tiredness that matched the atmosphere, the gray walls of the office space drowning out any and all colorful thoughts. Hawes chuckled a bit, the tension fading from his face to reveal a more jovial expression. Yeah, the gray walls and flickering bulbs don't help you stay awake. Don't worry about it. Get some coffee, and then I need you to fetch me the reports from that robbery that happened on Boulevard. Sure. I'll try not to get distracted this time, Jeremy said with a half-awkward smile, trying to brush off the guilt of his actions. But, despite his half-attempt at a joke, the creeping feeling of his ineptitude was crawling at the nape of his unguarded neck. He reached for it instinctively. As Jeremy began shuffling towards the door of the office area, he tried to open it, only to notice the handle turning already as the glass-pane door surged inwards and almost smacked him in the face. In front of him was surely a man-beast, at least, compared to Jeremy he was. The man was a staggering 6'5", a foot and a half taller than Jeremy. He loomed over Jeremy like a colossus, peering down at an unsquashed anthill. He had the supreme physical prowess of a pro wrestler. Instantly, legends such as Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant began to fill Jeremy's mind. The man had a thick, veiny neck, and boasted a line of cleanly shaven military buzzed hair which reminded Jeremy of the mint chocolates that room cleaners leave on the pillows at hotels. He had to try not to snicker at that comparison. The man stood in the doorway of the analytics division, staring contemptuously as he panned across the room from left to right and then back again. He took a gigantic bated breath in through his nose and paused. A moment to let the air sit and stifle inside before releasing it out with an energized, almost angry-sounding growl. The immense man now resembled a silver-backed gorilla with his intimidating forearms and puffed-out chest. Jeremy could even swear he saw steam shoot out of his nostrils when he grunted. Jeremy stood in shock at the events which were taking place right in front of him. He just stared up at the man who swallowed up the entire frame of the doorway just like a shark did to an unbeknownst swimmer. His overbearing figure weighed down upon him like a storm cloud. Jeremy nearly forgot the ability to breathe, taking in a sudden gasp through his mouth at the realization. The air was so stagnant you could slice it clean with a spoon, and then as if there was nothing happening at all, the aura dissipated, and everything calmed down. The air no longer seemed charged with energy, and the hulking man-beast strode in from the doorway, seemingly more relaxed. The man composed himself and pulled his shirt down a bit before walking off in a prideful march directly to the chief analytics office. Jeremy simply let out a breath of relief, thankful the confrontation was over with minimal effort, no doubt muttering some Arizona slang phrases under his breath, such as Mojave Monster and Slam me a rim of cactus juice, why don't you? Any more apes like him show up and I'll be lucky to make it to punch-out time, Jeremy thought oddly as he walked down to the coffee machine at the end of the hall. Its unmistakable buzzing matched frequencies with the above flickering light bulbs. He had only managed to pour a few ounces of, dare he never say this in front of the others, mediocre coffee into his styrofoam cup when a sudden crash erupted from the office space he had just left. Sudden bickering and male voices yelling could be heard out in the hall, and the commotion only seemed to rise in intensity the longer it carried on. Jeremy quickly tossed the partly filled cup of coffee in the trash bin and hurried back to see what could possibly be happening on a Tuesday afternoon in the analytics division of all places. When Jeremy arrived back at the doorway, what he saw was unbridled chaos. The hulking man-beast from before stood in the center, papers flying everywhere and cubicles knocked aside like yesterday's garbage. In his monstrous hand was the Analytics Division's chief and head supervisor, Liam Finch. Liam was gripped tightly by his throat and held slightly dangling in the air, his feet scrambling to grip the ground but not able to reach. Around them, other men were yelling and shooting ugly glances at the man who held their superior in his vice-like hold. A few of them even attempt to force his hand free of Liam's throat or to bring his arm down a bit, but to no avail. "Put me down, you ape!" Liam spat out through gritted teeth at the man who held his neck prisoner in his fingers. "First, You have to agree to listen to me. Otherwise, I'm not letting go till I squeeze that shitty little head of yours clean off your body. Capiche? The gorilla said this with unwavering boldness. He knew Liam was terrified of him. Jeremy stood still in the doorway, unable to even process what was happening before him. What in God's name happened for it to end up like this? Jeremy thought, bewildered. Fine, just put me down. Liam barely managed to choke out this time, the prospect of him passing out clearly on the front of everyone else's minds. To everyone's surprise, including Liam's, the man actually listened, placing Liam down gently and releasing his throat while patting his shoulders in an almost disrespectfully friendly way. There now, if you only had agreed to listen to me from the start, I wouldn't have had to manhandle you like that. The man smiled, no hint of resentment or even remorse for what he had done shown in his gorilla-like expression. Everyone else in the room seemed to relax just a bit. They held on to their tension just in case the man tried to grip Liam again, ready to tackle him all at once and pin him to the floor like some sort of Godzilla-sized monster. Liam was not amused in the slightest. He smacked the man's hand away from his shoulder swiftly and straightened his suit and tie, which had become undone in the events of his strangulation. Ugh, very well. I suppose I did just agree, didn't I? To my office, then, and try not to break anything else. This mess will take ages to clean, you overgrown cow. You, boss boy, clean this mess up, will you? Surely that's the least you could be doing right now instead of standing there looking stupid. Liam didn't even attempt to mask his disdain for Jeremy in the slightest, which only made the blood inside Jeremy rise and grow hotter like tempered daggers inside of a forge. Yet he obliged Liam, for he was his boss and he could not say no. Liam and the man left while Jeremy began picking up file after file, hugging them to his scrawny chest in a desperate attempt at organization. Hawes and the other men looked on with pity, feeling bad at the simple yet predatory nature of Liam's request. Hawes began to help Jeremy pick stuff up, handing him the scattered manila folders to which the papers he held belonged to. "Attaboy, Hawes." "Attaboy, Jeremy," Hawes said, trying to encourage him slightly. "Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't mind that sleazeball Liam. Nobody here really likes that prick anyways." "Ha, who needs him? I got you, Hawes, and you got my back, I know that much." Jeremy gave a sly smile up at Hawes as they both crouched down at the floor, peering over the files. It took Jeremy and Hawes roughly 40 minutes to collect and organize all the scattered files, but they did it nonetheless. By the time Jeremy had tucked the final incident report, just some nothing report on a man who was cooking pigeons inside a Bronx park, into its allocated folder, Liam and the man had been walking their way out of Liam's office and back towards the glass doors. Liam now seemed entirely different, no longer boasting his crude and rude demeanor, but one Jeremy himself had never seen Liam use. It was almost too nice, one that seemed to scream out, "I'm a kiss-ass, look at me!" Liam was trailing behind the man wantonly as the man strolled without a care through the office. "Right, so, when should I start? Oh, I'll need a uniform right away, and I suppose I'll need a partner as well." The words left the man's lips eagerly, without a care at how the request made him sound. Just a minute, Noah. I know what your father said, but I still think it's too early to put you on the force, and you should let me allocate some training time. Get you caught up with the rest of our officers." Liam pleaded desperately with the man, as if his very life had hung in the balance of this exchange. "And anyways, Noah, I simply don't have any spare officers to be your partner. All I'm asking is a bit of time, a week, maybe 2, to find you someone suitable." Liam sounded frantic as the words left his mouth. Jeremy began slightly amused as the disheveled state of his once prim and proper superior. Noah stopped walking now and pressed his finger to Liam's quivering lips, attempting to shut him up for a bit. If only we had time, Liam. But my father's orders were exact. Get on the force, Find a competent partner and investigate the area. I will not wait for some lousy slouch to make his appearance while more lives are being lost. The man almost sounded mature beyond his years now, in no way resembling the brute from earlier who gripped Liam at the neck. Jeremy stared at him in captivated wonder, fully stopping what he was doing to listen in on their conversation. Just then the man turned. His finger still held to Liam's lips and stared directly down at Jeremy. His eyes reminded Jeremy of his father's eyes, cold, calculating, seeking some deep winding core that you built yourself on, daring you to meet his gaze, and behind it all sat the same untempered anger, waiting to burst out and unleash itself on the world. Then, before Jeremy nearly passed out from the intensity of the gaze, he turned back to Liam. What about him, Liam? He's a busboy. Surely you could spare him, right? Noah said this with the wicked grin flashed upon his face. His molars and canines flashed Jeremy through his side profile and laid their mark upon his eyes with ferocity. Liam attempted to speak, but Noah's finger was still firmly planted on his lips. Furf. Liam attempted to say through the flesh of the finger. Oh. Oops, Noah said, before removing his appendage from Liam's mouth. Liam let out an exaggerated sigh at his release, then began again. You can't be serious, Noah. He hasn't had any time on the force. He's like a babe out of the womb. You'll get him killed, I'm telling you. Liam began pleading again to the man in a way that only screamed out to Jeremy as ass-kisser behavior, one that didn't match how Liam normally acted. Noah simply looked at Liam, then back down to Jeremy, hitting him again with that calculating gaze, attempting to size Jeremy up, to unmask the furrows of Jeremy's underlying potential. Then he turned back to Liam. I believe he will do just fine. After all, he doesn't seem like half the snot-nosed wimp you are, Liam. The cold remark left another hanging tension in the air. No one had badmouthed Liam like that and gotten away with it, least of all some thuggish punk who just showed up out of the blue. Jeremy couldn't believe his ears, could he? Did he really just say Jeremy wasn't a wimp? Suddenly, Jeremy felt a growing boldness inside his chest as he stood from his hunched position and decided to speak up. If I might be so bold as to interject, I believe I can do a lot of good on the force. I'm desperate to prove myself to be the kind of man my father was, you see. These mindless errands are wasted on a brilliant mind such as me. Jeremy winced almost as soon as the last words left his mouth, expecting an encore of laughs and gaudy cheers, maybe even some snide remarks about how Jeremy's bony ass was going to end up a smear on the pavement. Jeremy waited, and he waited, with shut eyes to hear that laughter, and yet there came none. Jeremy opened his eyes and saw everyone in the room was now looking at him with amazement. Noah stared, and Liam stared. Liam, not daring to say anything out of line in fear of Noah's retaliation. Slowly the silence broke, as Hawes began a slow, rhythmic clap, which picked up a bit of speed and became slightly encouraging. Yeah, you tell him, Jeremy. Own that shit. A few other officers added their own ambiguous claps, and slowly they all faded back into silence, sort of pathetically. But it still made Jeremy feel a bit better and more relaxed. Jeremy waited for a response. Any response from Noah, to signify that what Jeremy had said held any merit in his mind. After painstakingly long, Noah finally let out a chuckle. Not one that was pointed at Jeremy, or one that was ridiculing his resolve, but simply a happy chuckle that seemed genuine. There, Liam, you see, he wants to. He's eager to prove himself, unlike your pansy ass. Only eager to fill his pockets and sit behind a desk his whole life while us men do the real work. Noah walked over to Jeremy and outstretched his massive palm. His fingers, which gripped Liam's throat 40 minutes ago, were now patiently waiting before him. What's up? I'm Noah. I'm the son of the chief of police for the main branch here in New York. Starting now, I'm making you my honorary partner, so what's a scrawny shit like you named anyways? Jeremy stood stiff as a board, unable to move his arm to greet him. He simply held those words in his head, attempting to untangle them through his nervousness. At last he broke free and managed to weakly grip Noah's outstretched palm. Jeremy, Jeremy Burkler. He said it so quickly, Burkler sounded more like burger. His nervousness still caught in his throat, but he managed to spit it out anyways. Noah let out another chuckle. Well then, Mr. Burger, you can come with me, and you can say goodbye to whatever bullshit this dickhead Liam had you doing. I'm gonna turn you into a grade A badass. With that, Noah walked away and headed to the door, telling Jeremy to follow him almost wordlessly. When Jeremy had traced the large berth of steps Noah had taken to the door and stood at his towering side, he gave a slight wave to Hawes. Hawes, of course, was giving two massive thumbs up, happy for his junior assistant Jeremy. Noah turned again to Liam, who still had not said anything since Jeremy had spoken up to interrupt them. Oh, and, by the way, Liam, my father wanted me to tell you you're, fired. You're not doing a good job. You're doing a piss poor job running the analytics division, and he wants you out of the office by Friday. Hawes, congratulations, you're the new chief of analytics. I believe that covers everything. With that bold statement out of the way, he turned again to leave the office, opening the door and holding it open for Jeremy. Jeremy, who was walking backwards, was still staring at the gray office walls. Hans was growing a face of excitement and amusement at his recently ascertained promotion, his fellow officers giving him encouraging nudges on the shoulder and noogies on his head. Liam stood even more shocked than before, his mouth floundering like a beached fish. I you can't fire me. I've been. Oh, put a sock in it, Liam, Hawes barked loudly and mockingly. Suck it up and deal with it like a man. With that, Hawes gave Jeremy a sly wink, which said more to him in that moment than anything they had ever said to each other in those short 2 weeks. Had this all been part of Hawes's plan? Could he really have pulled the strings to getting Liam fired, himself promoted, and a position for Jeremy on the force, all in one go? The thought of Hawes being not purely and, frankly, terrifyingly methodical gave Jeremy gooseflesh of a severity unmatched, to which he simply left the question unanswered inside his mind. Some things didn't need answered, after all. They just needed to be. Jeremy turned away from that gray office, the walls still dull and the light bulbs still flickering, and walked out of the held glass door towards Noah, leaving behind the part of him that was just an errand boy and a stepping stool, and looking forward to the man that he could become. Underneath Noah's guidance. Inside the office, underneath the cheers for Hawes and the tears of Liam, there was the same hazel wolf spider in the empty corner of the photocopy room. Now having successfully webbed up the clumsy fly, it prepared to sink its fangs into the trapped insect, horrifically liquefying its prey and sucking the decayed juices greedily into its hungry maw. Predator meets prey. Ensuing violence commences.